Hello, what's going on?
How are you?
Enjoying the daytime.
Just having a nice little afternoon
Yeah,
breather outside.
absolutely. I had an early day today, so and it's a nice day, which is very nice. So
I know this week has
get to
been so
enjoy these.
nice. I also, I enjoyed my morning outside this morning today too.
Oh,
It's going to
nice.
be so nice for like the next 10 days.
That's
Um,
awesome.
Anyone who has a child knows that like when you're watching, like when you've got a toddler, you're just watching the weather. Like, please let it sun. All right, I'm going to pull Rebecca in too. Yeah, I'm in full cozy mode today still because I got my vaccines yesterday, so I'm like, oh, that explains why I feel terrible. I got my like
Yeah, yeah.
booster and my flu
That makes
shot.
sense.
Get your flu shots, everybody. Hey,
Hi,
Rebecca.
how's
Hello,
it going?
hello. Good. How are you doing?
Good, good. It's
Have you met
finally
Arya
nice out.
before?
I don't think we
There's
have.
No, this is our first time. I've been following you for a while though. I really love your stuff, so it's nice to officially meet you.
Yeah, you too. Same.
I always say Rebecca was one of my first TikTok friends in New Hampshire when I started making like content about what was happening. She was just so nice and like got on a Zoom call with me and just like explained how things worked. And we're like, here's how like a nonprofit works and like here's how
That's
activism
awesome.
works. And I was like, I don't know anything. I feel like a lot of us just like woke up in January and we're like coming out of our cryo chamber, like, okay, I'm ready to be
Absolutely.
helpful. Like, and Rebecca was one of those people that was like, I'm going to help you learn how all this shit works. So, Rebecca, for people who are just meeting you, talk a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, totally. So my name is Rebecca Bollier. I live in New Hampshire. I organize for 350 New Hampshire Action, which is a small environmental nonprofit that does a bunch of campaigns to um, promote climate justice and stop the climate crisis throughout the state. And I got involved in environmental activism like 12 years ago now. And for the last six, I've been organizing with 350 New Hampshire. Um, and my role over here is communications, which is why you see my face on TikTok sometimes. Because a couple years ago we were like, this is a new thing. Should we try it? And then one of our high school students taught me how to use it, and then here we are.
That's amazing. And they did a great job. Sometimes we all need a high school student teaching us how to like work the apps. Um,
100%. They're way more creative than some of the older volunteers that we've got, depending on the day.
Talk a little bit about, give us kind of like the 101 level on the work that you're doing right now in New Hampshire. And like, I know there's a kind of a couple of pockets of hot topics right now. Do you want to talk a little bit about just like the landscape of, for those folks who have not tuned into anything about climate justice, anything environmental related? What are the things that you're worried or you're working on right now that people should actually like know is happening around them?
Yeah, totally. So, 350 New Hampshire's mission is to stop the climate crisis by building grassroots support for clean energy and from a transition away from fossil fuels. You know, we think everybody deserves clean air, clean water, and a healthy environment to live in. Sounds pretty basic, but when we're up against the fossil fuel industry that's spewing propaganda everywhere and building new pipelines left and right, um, where we're really focused on like anything that's going on in New Hampshire that can get us closer to a future where nobody has to live in environmental injustice situations. So right now for our organizing in the state, that looks like engaging in the utilities affordability issue, like both how unaffordable utility companies are making our lives and how polluting their industry is and how much utility companies prop up fossil fuels. So we've got a campaign really focused on that. We're also working on shutting down and transitioning all of the fossil fuel plants that are doing the worst damage in New Hampshire. So we've got a shutdown date for the last coal-fired power plant in all of New England, which is in Bow, New Hampshire, if you've never seen it before. Um, and are working on a couple of fossil fuel peaker plant projects right now, where a peaker plant are those ones that only get turned on like a couple times a year. So we have a whole campaign focused on using those energy grid ties to actually like supply clean energy to the grid instead of sitting there polluting and, becoming disrepaired because they don't get used very often. So those are like kind of our two main campaigns right now. But we also we've got volunteers across the state doing a bunch of different things. Our youth team is really focusing right now on water quality issues because of both like PFAS chemicals in people's water and like runoff from some of these plants polluting the Merrimack River, for example. We've also got people trying to pass community power programs in their own towns, and a whole bunch of like grassroots volunteer led efforts to get us off of fossil fuels and transition to clean energy. So that's kind of the big overview of all the stuff we're working on.
That's really awesome. You said you guys actually had a date right now for the shutdown. When is that?
Yeah, so the company that owns Merrimack Station is called Granite Shore Power. They announced in, I want to say it was March of last year, that they're not going to burn any more coal after 2028. They are a part of this really wonky regional energy system at this thing called the Ford Capacity Auction. You all don't need to know like what the heck the details of that
I love
but
when you're like, no, don't even. It's not important.
It's not,
not for your brain.
It's not important like what the process of that is, but what's important to know is that like the coal plant gets promised money through this process that they like get every month just to stay operating no matter how much they run. That money, by the way, comes from our utility bills. So like they've got money promised through halfway through 2028, and then they're done. They're like, they didn't enter the next auction that would set them up for further years. So they've decided they're not going to keep doing that. And according to their press release, they're going to transition it to a renewable energy park. I don't know what a renewable energy park is. That's a new
That sounds so
concept.
fun.
It sounds really nice,
Yeah, but they also have to clean up all the crap that the coal put in the dirt over there if there's going to be any kind of like community space. They actually own one of the boat launches in Bow. So we're hoping that they stick with this plan. They've got like consultants and stuff lined up. But we also, want to make sure that in this transition, the folks who live in Bow get a voice and employed, perhaps. They actually haven't been employing union workers at this plant for a while now. So we also just want to see them actually create some more jobs for people in the area that are like solid and union and have good working conditions. I actually grew up in a town that had a coal plant and know people who've had respiratory issues related to working at said coal plant, and it's not pretty. So that's all like a part of the picture. We can't just be like, shut it down. Okay, leave. We actually need to do the transition work, which is honestly the hardest part.
Yeah, it's so complex, what you're talking about. Obviously, there's all these different like components and all these different elements that are being layered in. And I know you mentioned one of the areas where you guys are focusing right now is around energy, electric, talking about our electric bills, talking about what does that mean, how to interpret what you're seeing, how to interpret, I know a lot of us just get the bill in the mail and we're like, that's a lot higher than it was before. For those of us who are coming in uninitiated to this conversation, what should we know about that electric bill that we're looking at and like why that has gone up so much in recent years?
Yeah, that's so many reasons. So the first thing I'll say is that like when you get the utility bill, we've got two sides to it. There's like a supply and then a delivery side, and then all these other little subcharges. And it's confusing and it's not straightforward. And it wouldn't be that hard for Eversource or other companies to like put the bill in plain language, but they don't want us to know what they're doing, so they intentionally make it confusing. Um, that is to say, in all of those charges, some of the money that we pay every month goes to this entity called ISO New England, which like oversees the whole electric grid. They're the ones who are like, oh, we're going to need this much. We got to have this power plant turn on over there, and we got to have this one turn on over there. So they get some of the money from our bills. Eversource gets some of the money that it's like directed specifically to transmission projects. So like line upgrades and like fixing the transformer down the street that they own and that kind of stuff. And then they get to charge you a bunch of different like pieces to that they claim are being used to operate the grid. So the thing that makes this all even more complicated is that we have a Public Utilities Commission in New Hampshire that like has to approve any rate changes on our bill. So Eversource has to go like file with them if they want to increase rates or something else. So one of the things that's happening right now is they keep increasing the supply rate and the delivery rate. So you'll see on your bill like how much energy you used last month, and the supply rate is that times whatever calculation they put together to charge you for how much you're actually using. And then they get to charge you depending on like how much it costs for them to deliver the electricity to your house through all the poles and wires. So they keep putting both of those rates higher every time they go to the PUC. The other thing that they just increased, which is making everybody's bills higher by like the same amount, is the like I think it's just called like base charge, something like that. But you get a line on your bill that is just like for receiving your bill. Like, yay, I got a utility bill. This is the amount that we pay before any of the calculations are done. It was like $13 or $14 for a while. They just got approval to put it up to $43.
See, that's like that's okay. Like that does not compute. Can we talk about that? Like, is that just pure like because is that purely because we have a monopoly? Like, is that because they have a monopoly in New Hampshire? Like, how does that happen? How do you essentially almost 4x that base cost like overnight?
I mean, you said the main reason why that's possible is because they have basically a monopoly in the state. There's no other utility company that they are competing with, and most of us don't get to pick like where we're getting our electricity, so we're just kind of stuck with it. The other one of the groups that's trying to have a rehearing about this $43 is the AARP, because for people with a fixed income,
yeah, that's a huge jump.
It's a huge jump. So to put this the most simply, the like hearings that resulted in this were complicated, but also like the PUC made some decisions that weren't talked about in the public hearing. That's one of the reasons the AARP is like, we got to do this again because you changed some things about the formula for how we decide rates without us knowing what you were talking about.
Yeah, like what kind of account? It sounds like sorry, and then I'll let Arya jump in after this. But like, what's the account?
No, you're asking perfect question. You're asking the same stuff I want to ask right now. So keep going.
But I'm bringing you in next. Normally I'm sidebarring with him, but I forgot my computer today, so we're keeping it cash. So don't worry about cutting me off. But I guess my question is just like, what's the accountability structure look like? Like as customers, as consumers, like how. It sounds like there's some level of there's some level of like government responsibility. And I think this probably is a really basic question, but I don't know the answer, right? Like what recourse do we have?
Yeah, this is both about like who we vote for in the state house and about how the Public Utilities Commission works. So the Public Utilities Commission, all the commissioners are appointed by the governor. So we've got a commission right now full of Governor Ayotte and Governor Sununu's people, many of which have like worked for Eversource in the past or have some other kind of industry experience that like could be a conflict of interest depending on if they're the kind of person that can put that aside or not. And so like they are the ultimate decision makers on any like regulation for Eversource. So Eversource wants to raise rates, they got to go to the PUC. Eversource wants to build a new transformer station over there, they got to go to the PUC. And then the rules that the PUC is governed by are things that the legislature decides. So some of the reasons it's so easy for them to just like get rate hikes whenever they want um, are just that like our laws are not strict about that. We don't have any
Mm.
ratepayer protections. Massachusetts, for example, I know New Hampshire doesn't want to be Massachusetts, but Massachusetts has a law where like when rates go up um, for whatever reasons, the utility companies can't just like automatically go and charge that rate. It has to get averaged out over however many like periods of rate increases. So if Eversource has to increase rates and they ask for it to be doubled in Massachusetts, that doubling happens over the period of like a couple of years and not just like right away the way that New Hampshire has it. So that's just like one example of a ratepayer protection, but we don't have any laws like that here. So we can only do
So
so much.
just to reiterate what you said, you're basically saying the people who are on that panel are politically assigned, and the rules that they govern themselves by are also like legislative rules that right now are, dominated by Republicans. So they're the ones that are kind of creating the rules. So there are really no rules. And my question is has there been a time where Eversource has come to that board and been like, we need to increase our rates, and they've said no? Or they've given, because based on what I've heard from people describing this story who are much more knowledgeable than I am, I'm learning a lot from it, about it every day. That it's not even like the process is just they go and they ask for it and they get it. And it isn't based on any kind of calculation. When they have rent control in places, they calculate it based on cost of living or something. But there's no real. It's just kind of like the meeting is kind of symbolic. They've already accepted the rate hike before the meeting starts. Is that true?
I think so. Yeah, there's so at the PC, if you want to get involved in a case, you have to file as what's called an intervener in said case. So we have our consumer advocate for New Hampshire who goes and intervenes in those cases to present a case about like how it shouldn't go up the amount that it has. But the consumer advocate's office has largely failed at being able to really persuade. Some other organizations in New Hampshire, like the AARP that I mentioned, have like been involved in these filings, and you can go and do it. But like filing to be an intervener is also like not straightforward at all. They make all of these processes really hard to engage in, and of course the hearings are during most people's working hours, and like you can send comments to the Public Utilities Commission whenever you want about a case that they're hearing, but they don't seem to weigh public opinion that much into some of their decision making. So,
And what
yeah,
what
I
can?
hope that
I'm
answers
sorry, I
your
didn't mean I
question.
didn't mean to cut you off. I don't know if you were finished. No, I was just I was curious if for someone like in my position right now, someone who is still learning about this, is learning about it every day. What more can I do on an individual basis to kind of like put pressure on the entire mechanism? Because I don't know where to start putting the pressure. I don't know. I don't know if I should put it on my own representatives or if I should go straight to the board. Or I mean, what would you recommend?
Yeah, engaging at the Public Utilities Commission is so difficult. Even for an organization like us, like we would need a couple more full-time employees to be able to just follow what's going on over there for us to be effective in that lane. There are some other cool orgs like Clean Energy New Hampshire who do that a lot. So I would say like the two ways that people can try to address this are one like following Clean Energy New Hampshire or the AARP or whichever of these organizations that you want to that's trying to fight for lower rates when these cases come up and see what you can do to support them in that effort. The other is just our state representatives. There was a bill introduced, not this past legislative session, but the year before, I forget which rep introduced it, but it was to break up Eversource's monopoly and not allow them to have control over the whole system. Guess what? It failed. But we can have our reps introducing that kind of legislation over and over again. Ratepayer protections, things to break up the monopoly, like rent control, but for utility bills. That's all possible if our legislature looked a little different.
Speaking on the note about the legislature, Arya and I have been doing a lot of these interviews on live with a lot of progressive candidates who are currently in New Hampshire state legislature or are running for higher office. Maybe you can answer sort of in your personal capacity, but like what are you looking for candidates to promise, or what are you looking for out of this next roster of candidates for people who are going to earn your vote? What do you want to hear these people talking about? What do you want me to be asking them, on our behalf?
Yeah. So many things. Our endorsement process will be next spring, in case there's any legislators listening in here. We'll open up our endorsement questionnaire and endorse folks for the New Hampshire State House at least. And I think what we've been asking them the past couple of years since we've been engaging in this utility justice work is like, what ideas do you have? What are you going to do to hold the utility companies accountable? And for us, that looks like, if those monopoly bills get heard, making sure that these folks are voting the right way on those. I know there's been a lot of good work on trying to change the way some of the transmission system upgrade projects work, and making sure that the price for that can't just be automatically passed down to all of us. Particularly, there's been a problem with projects that are like deemed unnecessary being created just because it makes the company more money. They're called asset condition projects. That's a story for another day. But
everything I learn is just, it's like everything I learn more new things that are upsetting every day. I'm just like, what is this shit?
Without my consent, I learn things.
Yeah, so I want to know what these legislators are going to do to like break up all the monopolies, honestly, not just in the utility realm. And to like establish some ratepayer protections and renters protections and like property tax relief, and all these all go in the same bucket for me, like of how unaffordable living in New Hampshire has gotten. Like we've got to address housing and utility bills and like the whole school funding problem if we're going to actually be able to fund clean energy and like make it so people can afford to pay their bills and all that kind of stuff.
Arya, I was gonna pivot to a new topic, but I want to give you another chance. What other questions do you have before we move on to something else?
No, I mean, there was one. I think I'm good. Are we going to move into the Supreme Court topic? Is that what you want to do?
Yeah, let's talk about the Supreme Court stuff.
Can I add one more quick little tidbit before we
please?
go from
No,
utilities?
tell us whatever.
The one other thing that 350 New Hampshire is trying to do right now, because our legislature is not affecting change in this area and the PUC is terrible, is that we are trying to pressure Eversource directly to stop shutting people's power off during the summer heat waves, because they have a policy like this for the winter so that people don't freeze. But with climate change, we're getting worse and worse heat waves. Like the end of June this year was unbearable without an AC or a fan, and like people are going to the emergency room on those days. So we've been trying to get Eversource to commit to not shutting people's power off during summer heat waves. So I think the link to that is in our bio on our profile if people want to sign that petition. But that's like a very simple policy change for Eversource to make, so that we can actually have a company that is supporting their customers and not just trying to make profits for their shareholders. So
it's crazy.
That's the other important piece of this.
Yeah, let's like spend a minute on shutoffs just for a sec, because I think a lot of people maybe who haven't been in this situation don't think about it, right? But like this is a very real thing that happens when people are getting behind on their bills. And like you're saying, when the weather is extreme heat or extreme cold, it is dangerous to be in your house without power, especially if you're older, especially if you have medical condition. Like that's not even talking about people who have medical conditions who are reliant on the whatever the temperature or like actual medical devices that need to be charged, powered, things like that.
Yeah.
Like it's very scary that these privately held companies have the power to like withhold life-saving potentially. Like it just is crazy to me that that's even still allowed. Is that something, do you guys hear this from people a lot, that it happens? And can you just talk a little bit more about your experience like working around that topic?
Yeah, actually, when bills spiked like significantly more than usual for the first time, I want to say it was 2021, um, or 22. We started before we really even launched a utility justice campaign, just like canvassing door to door in communities that we were like figured were most likely to be folks who might have their power shut off. And like our goal then was just to try to connect them with the resources that New Hampshire does have to help people pay their bills. In that process, we realized how inadequate those resources are. We got stories from people who were like, well, I applied for the aid and I'm getting $5 off a month, which is not helping. um, but we have some of this data about disconnections. Let me, yeah, from 2019 to 2022, just in New Hampshire, there were over 43,000 shutoffs.
Wow.
That's a lot higher than I would have guessed.
Yeah. Some of that was there was a moratorium on it during COVID for a while, so they weren't allowed to. And then
Because
when
it's
they
also
were
like
allowed to, everybody was behind.
it's crazy when you think about it, because it's like they don't like for what reason, like it's not like they need the it's not like they're like, oh, we really need that money to get our make sure we can stay in business. It's just like it's just kind of fundamentally crazy when you think about it, and inhumane. And one of the things I saw in one of your recent videos, Rebecca, was you were talking about kind of what an ideal future looks like here, and like what's a better system, like for those of us who have never even like dared to dream, what is the ideal future look like what is the better option? Do we have to live like this, or are there better ways?
Well, this wasn't how our utility system was originally made. Like, it was a public good and treated as a public good for a long time until we started letting private for profit companies buy all of these systems. So, um, but I will say there are imperfections for sure in co-ops and in public owned utilities, but that's the direction I think we need to be moving so that shareholders are not a part of the conversation. This is about, in a lot of cases, like life or death when you're delivering electricity to people. And right now we've let it be in a system where giant corporations can make 800,000 or $800 million a year and still be disconnecting 43,000 people.
So you said they're making $800 million a year.
That was their profits in 24 for Eversource.
Just wanted to let that sit there for a second. Yeah, and they're still doing 43,000 shutoffs over several years. That's crazy. In our state, again, that's crazy.
And you just mentioned a moratorium during COVID, right? So they were still getting charged on that, adding up on their bill, and then once COVID was over, it landed all in their lap altogether, right? It just doesn't make sense. I know that's what they were doing in a lot of like rental properties too, in terms of like moratorium. It's like not really help, It's it probably just saves you a little bit until that moment it becomes a waterfall. And I think it's crazy that that's not part of the thinking when they're doing moratoriums or they're trying to help the public.
I think they shouldn't be allowed to shut electricity off, period. Like, this
Absolutely.
summer ask that we're making is the bare minimum.
Like, you're
Absolutely.
begging for a shred of humanity. You're not even begging for like it's crazy.
For sure.
So one of the things we were going to touch on today too was you've been talking a little bit about, so you guys keep an eye on a lot of corruption, for lack of a better word, and how all of these things are interconnected and how money is flowing through the state and how it's involved in different places. So all that to say, we've got a new Supreme Court nominee in the state of New Hampshire, right? Can you talk a little bit about what you guys are tracking in that situation?
Yeah, so Governor Ayotte again gets to appoint people. The executive council in New Hampshire has to approve who the appointees are. But this time around, the latest New Hampshire Supreme Court nomination from her is this person called Brian Gold. And if you look at his history, he's got a long history of like supporting her and her campaign. He was on Ayotte's legal counsel when she was running for governor. Um, Spent a bunch of time representing Casella Waste Systems, like over 30 years representing Casella Waste Systems.
And
The hearing is happening right now in the
like
in the
today?
State House. I am not sure if it's over yet. They were not live streaming it for the public.
Do they typically live stream these things to the public?
Not the executive council meetings. Kind of depends on the time.
It's a little weird, right?
Yeah, we did have a lot of people send in comments because it's a kind of a pretty obvious conflict of interest. Not only has he been a lawyer for Casella in their case that they're suing the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services for not allowing them to have a permit for a landfill that was really going to be built really close to a big lake, which is the main reason it was denied. But
And
he's
so
also
there,
been a
so
lobbyist
who's suing?
for them.
Sorry, go back. Why? Who is he suing? He's suing.
He is the lawyer for Casella Waste, who is suing the New Hampshire Department of Energy,
Yeah, that
Department
seems
of
like
Environmental Services. Sorry.
Am I like? Does that not seem like a conflict of interest to anybody
That's-
else? Like, I'm sorry, that seems a little bit crazy.
I mean, it's like that's like the definition of conflict. It's so insane that when someone like says the story out loud, I feel like I am like it's like an audio SNL skit almost, like it does not make any sense on any level, and yeah, I mean it's so insane that something like that is allowed to happen. And with the landfill, I mean, they're suing for the landfill, right? To build that landfill right next to the state park.
Yep.
It's crazy.
And what's just for those who don't know, why is it a problem to put a landfill next to a state park or next to a park?
Again, with New Hampshire's like lack of solid regulation, our rules are so lenient that businesses that build landfills want to come to New Hampshire. We get all of the trash from like Massachusetts and other states because it's easier to get a landfill built here than in other places. So because of that,
That's a fun
they want
piece
to
of
put
information I didn't know.
Yeah. They want to build this landfill up in Dalton next to Forest Lake State Park, and I forget exactly how many feet it is estimated to be like away from the lake, but too close. And when you get a landfill that leaks, there's all sorts of methane and other pollutants that come from landfills, and you're going to make that lake unswimmable in like 20 years if those kinds of leaks go unchecked. And the Casella's record is not with them in terms of preventing these kinds of leaks. So there have been folks on the ground up there fighting that landfill for 5 years now.
I think it's so funny. Like you mentioned it in chat too, Marissa, responding to the comment where this state does nothing but complain about Massachusetts. And I'm thinking about housing constantly, right? Which is like a area that I'm focusing, which is like you don't protect renters here. That's how you bring Massachusetts people here. And now you're telling me Massachusetts literally dumps its trash here because of our laws and our rules, and it again doesn't make any sense. Sorry, this is just my outrage.
I want like a politician to pick this, like be like make this their issue, because like yeah, it is what a crazy it's just like a what's the word I'm looking for? It's just you're right. It's like there's such an intellectual dishonesty, Arya, with like the idea that like we're so like, oh, don't bring the Massachusetts stuff. But then because we have allowed our state to just like fall like apart in ways like that, where we are just like welcoming literal garbage. It's
Mhm.
crazy. Like,
It's
If
insane.
you want to add a level of crazy to this, the folks organizing to stop that landfill did get AOT to say that they shouldn't put a landfill there. Like, she's on the right side of that fight,
mhm.
but still nominating this guy to the Supreme Court of New Hampshire.
It's what is your read on Ayot's first go around, or first, better part of the year as governor? I feel like there's been some retrospection happening in the New Hampshire community about, how she sort of made little offerings to people on the left while still being largely in line with MAGA. I don't know if you have any opinions just from the work that you've been doing on, did she behave in a way you expected? Did she legislate in a way you expected this year? Or did anything kind of surprise you guys?
I think there were a couple of surprise vetoes from her time so far, but honestly, she's just been sneaky about everything that she is doing. Her priorities very much are aligning with some of the more MAGA legislation that has been passed in the state house. And she has done absolutely nothing to make New Hampshire like actually affordable for everyone. She's prioritizing things like bathroom bans instead of affordability. And sorry, I'm reading the
I don't know.
chat.
Why is
I
she
don't
in
know why she's
Canada
in
right now?
Canada.
Ken's literally out of the country. Yeah. Uh, yeah. Um,
She got a lot of money during her run for governor from NextEra Energy, who owns Seabrook Nuclear Plant, as well as some other fossil fuel facilities in New England. So while we've been able to like woo her on the right side of this landfill fight, when it comes to any other energy thing, she's not doing it. She signed a budget that completely gutted the renewable energy fund. The money for energy efficiency is gone, which like is one way to help make the electric bills more affordable when you're using less. And she also signed some of the legislation that was like climate denier conspiracy theory in a House resolution, and got rid of offshore wind office in her Department of Energy. Like, that's going to fix anything when that's like one of the ways that we can get local clean energy without having to ship in oil and gas from somewhere else. So she's definitely not been she's been really vocal about things that have helped her look better, but behind the scenes is like signing all sorts of atrocious crap.
yeah, it's been an interesting year for you guys. What kind of advice do you have for people who have not engaged on this topic before and are looking to kind of stay more involved? I think from a climate perspective, obviously there's a lot of stuff happening really. It just seems very active in New Hampshire. There's a lot of moving pieces. How do people stay updated? And then also, like, I feel like you're very good at kind of following the money a little bit and like tracking who's involved with what. Do you have any advice to people about like paying closer or any just thoughts about paying closer attention to the inner workings of like what's happening here in New Hampshire?
Yeah.
Those are
Okay,
two
I'm
sort of
going to
separate
tackle the
questions.
second
Yeah.
one first. So, uh, we have things like Citizens United, where like corporations can now give politicians money and all that crap. But we also have campaign finance laws where we can find all of that data. So if you have no idea what your local representative is doing or what your congressional members are doing, it is really easy. Go to Open Secrets online and look that person up, because we can find all of their filings and all of the money that they're receiving. And a lot of time that maps out with where their priorities are. So AOT, getting money from NextEra, it's clear that nuclear is a priority for her. She signed a couple of bills this session that would allow utility companies to own small scale nuclear, or like make something easier for us to build more of that. And that's not clean energy, guys. So like you can usually, when you look it up, find the money. So if you don't know what money your rep's getting, you should definitely go to Open Secrets and look it up. Or just like message 350 New Hampshire Action on here and I will look it up for you. Um, the legislators in New Hampshire, because there's so many in the state house, like don't accept quite as much money, but you can find that Eversource has given money to some of them. Um, and it is very obvious what those people are doing in return.
That's interesting. That's a good
Yeah.
action item for folks to look up, is specifically who is getting money from Eversource. Because we have, especially in a state like New Hampshire, where we have such a high ratio of representatives to citizens, our voices are very important and we are underutilizing our own voices. And so, like, my hope is that as we enter like this next election season and we have this community of folks who's very active on here, is like, I want to see people doing that research and creating content, right? I want to see those people not just doing the research, but like make a freaking TikTok post about who's collecting money and where it's coming from. The beauty of an app like this one is you don't have to have a lot of followers to get the message out. So like people will engage with that content, whether you have 2 followers or 100. So just start making stuff, send it to me and I'll repost it too. So like that's, I think that would be my challenge to y'all, is do some research on like who is representing you that is not actually representing you.
100%. Put that stuff up on a flyer and put it all over your neighborhood so your neighbors can see it. You know, like there are really simple things like that we can do, because like the hardest thing here is getting the word out and making sure everybody actually knows what nonsense their reps are up to, because most people don't.
This is the kind of stuff too where I think we all get so like sucked into the doom cycle of what's happening at a federal level because of like the bigness of like what's happening in the country. But I'm like, if we can all, like, no matter what happens at a federal level, we all are still going to be each other's neighbors in 6 months or a year, right? So we need to keep fucking like building out these systems and supporting each other. Sorry, I'm getting all hot now, but like this is the kind of stuff that like, let's all care about this stuff and let's all care about our neighbors in this way and like make life in New Hampshire, make life in our communities better for each other. So there are very tactile ways we can do that. Arya, any other thoughts on this from you?
Yeah, well, I had more of like a kind of personal question for you. Like, if there was something that you could educate the citizens of New Hampshire like overnight, there was one thing you just wanted the people of New Hampshire to know about right away, what would that be? And then the second question would be, if you had an ask for the citizens of New Hampshire, you had one ask, one thing you wanted them to do, if it was signing a petition or going to a website, anything, what would that be?
Yeah. If I could have everybody just like wake up tomorrow and know something, it is that what is happening on the federal level is like so close to identical to what's happening on the state level here. Trump put out executive orders to halt offshore wind, and then the New Hampshire legislature got rid of all mention of offshore wind in their Department of Energy and a position that was like in charge of that project. It's happening here the same exact way, and I would want everyone to know that that is what is happening now. And for everybody who's watching who like is passionate about climate justice and economic justice and like wants to get involved, 350nhaction.org is our website. You can sign one of our petitions there or sign up to volunteer with us. Like one of the reasons we've won the campaigns that we stopped a pipeline, we got a shutdown date for the coal plant I mentioned earlier in this call. And like, we only did that because we had hundreds of people who were showing up to rallies and sending in public comments and like getting involved on the ground. So bunch of ways that people can do that, and you know, just reach out or even reach us out on TikTok and you can talk to me and I'll get you plugged in.
It's such a great reminder. We have so much power if people just show up, right? Like just a couple hundred people showing up like in real life can make such a big difference with this kind of work that you guys are doing. And speaking of showing up, I did want to do a plug before we wrap up. All 3 of us are going to be at Peas on Tuesday morning together for the there is going to be a Peas Development Authority meeting that is at 8:30, and then there's going to be an get ice out of Peas protest happening from 8 to 10. I'll put the flyer. I've been promoting the flyer and stuff on my page. I'll post it again. But Arya and I are going to go. We're going to try to do some live stream stuff from there, depending on how things are going. Rebecca, you're going to be there as well in your personal capacity. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, right now, especially with everything going on in the country, uh, climate change is forcing migration, and migration has to be seen as a human right. So these are deeply connected issues, and I hope to see some of
Absolutely.
you there.
Are you going? You said you're going with some of your instruments.
Yes, when I'm not organizing with 350 New Hampshire, I'm part of the leftist marching band out of Portsmouth, and we're
Cool.
gonna come make some noise.
That is so. I
Literally,
like.
let's go.
Isn't that so cool? Arya, have you seen them play before?
No, I haven't. I'm very excited, actually.
It's so cool. You guys, is this like? Yeah, Rebecca, what do you play?
Yeah, I played the alto saxophone.
Can you tell us
I
a little
joined
bit
about
about?
Nice.
like
Yeah.
4 years ago, and the leftist marching band, if you go to leftistmarchingband.org, um, gets requests from people from all over the state to come show up at protests, and we bring some really great energy to pump people up and get people like ready for action. So um, it's been a lot of fun to be a part of, and uh, if you come on Tuesday, we'll teach you some of the words to some of the songs that we also sing. So
That's awesome.
Ooh. I know. I saw you guys. I think you were at the one of the Portsmouth protests that I was at with my kid a while ago, and that was like the highlight for her. Was she was like so excited about the band, and for me too. It's just a nice energy, especially like we're all I think going to a lot of these kind of protests and the shit is heavy, right? Like you've I know on a personal level been involved in a lot of that activism too around the ICE activity that's happening locally, and so I think your ability to like you guys bringing some positive energy to that kind of environment is so appreciated. So yeah, I hope to see folks who are here in the live stream in person on Tuesday if you're able to. I know that that stuff can always be tough with work, but we will be there, and we're excited to get to see us. We'll see you in person. And Arya, any last questions for Rebecca?
No, I just want to say thank you so much for coming and sitting with us, and I really look forward to Tuesday and talking more.
Cool. Rebecca, thank you so much for being here with us. And we'll post the recording on YouTube, and we'll send this link out in the Discord, guys. So thank you all so much.
cool. Thanks for having me.
All right, bye.
Bye, guys.